This special episode of the One Piece podcast contains some sensitive and potentially triggering discussion about Nobuhiro Watsuki, the creator of Rurouni Kenshin. And so, if you don't want to listen to that discussion, you could either skip this episode entirely, or you could skip until the time and the time code in the description below. We also have a discussion around halfway through the show about our love and passion for One Piece and how it's changed over the last decade and even week to week. So if you'd still like to listen to that discussion, again, you could skip to the time code below. But if you want to hear the entire episode, we're going to get started right now. So enjoy the show. Hey everyone, this is a special episode of the One Piece podcast. My name is Zach.
My name is Ed.
And my name is Steve.
So we're recording this as a special episode. Ed, you mentioned it on the last show.
Yeah, you told me to mention it, and so we're kind of committed to doing it now. So
Ed's super happy about that. So
it's a heavy topic.
It's a heavy topic.
Fun to talk about.
No, it isn't fun to talk about. That's one of the reasons I kind of want to do it as like a separate thing, and also one of the reasons why I wanted to weigh in on it.
I'm just going to let you go because I talked a lot yesterday.
You've been talking a lot recently because you've been hosting, which thank you so much for doing. I'll say that right here since it's good.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Zach.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate being able to depend on you for putting that out. But we're here to talk about a few different subjects that I think have been relatively prevalent, especially in the Annie Twitter verse that we're stuck in.
I don't know. I think it made an impact. It's just sort of been slowly making its way through. It hasn't blown up in a way that I thought it would. So maybe people don't really know who Nobuhiro Watsuki is, I guess.
Yeah, so we're gonna talk about two major subjects. The first one is gonna be the Watsuki Oda interview, which we'll talk about in a moment. And I also just kind of want to talk about our evolving One Piece fandom since we've been in it for quite a while. So let's talk about the Watsuki thing first. Ed, you gave a pretty good primer, I thought, about who he is and his kind of stake in things. I was looking at his Wikipedia page, and it's amazing how only one sentence refers to the topic we're going to mostly be going through here. Yeah. For those who don't know, Watsuki is the creator of Rurouni Kenshin, which was this big anime and manga series of the 90s.
It ran for like 30 volumes. It was like, I think maybe the most popular, one of the most popular comics in Jump in the mid 90s between Dragon Ball and One Piece. And Oda was an assistant in like 1994 when he was like 19 years old.
Yeah, I don't know exactly the year. But
94, 95, because he was working on his own.
It's when he was working on the one shots and
right.
Was it the had he already? Oh no, the competition. I think he.
I mean, it's a pretty short period because, like, he's 18, and then by the time he's 22, One Piece is serialized, so there isn't a lot of time in between.
And I think he was either an assistant or helping out in some regard on several different series. And as Joey mentioned in the last episode, that is like a formative period in Oda's career that I think we do have a lot of interest in hearing more about. Unfortunately, Watsuki, the creator of this series, was brought up on child pornography charges in 2017. Just when he was premiering a reboot, or I guess not even reboot, it was a sequel series.
It was a
reboot.
Yeah, was it a reboot?
It was like a time skip, wasn't it? With new characters?
It was it was completely the ones that came out here. I remember it was like a retelling of the story and just
right.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, it was canceled from Jump. It came back in Japan 9 months later in monthly Jump Square, and it's been running pretty much ever since. Never came back in America though. So
no.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
he was fined $2,000 and didn't go to jail.
Yeah, it's so I was looking this up
because you gotta say it like that, because otherwise you're just sort of like dancing around the fact that Japan's got a weird. It's got a fucked up criminal justice system. I
was dancing around. I was leading up to it because this is the crazy stuff here. $2,000, which so I was just in Morocco and we accidentally made some mistakes with the currency conversion because it's multiplied by 10 and not 100 as the yen is. So I'm like, oh wait, no, that is $2,000. That's not even like that's a lot of money, sure, but not when you're like, I assume, an extremely wealthy and successful mangaka in Japan. Okay, right. Put that aside. So I looked up the law in Japan versus the law in New York as just an example. So in Japan, I think the maximum penalty was a year in prison. And this fine was actually, I think, somewhere in the middle. I think it went as low as like $800. In New York, for, I think, even a lesser crime, but like a similar-ish crime, you get from anywhere from 1 to 4 years in prison and or 10 years probation and a fine. So obviously there is a scale of justice difference here.
You're sort of. Also, there's the first thing of that it was only possession was only made illegal in 2014. So that's what we're dealing with here.
Yeah.
So
there's this is just to put it out there, a very weird. I'm trying to think of the adjective for it. Gross subject.
Yeah.
Especially like having to read some of the not details, even like they're not like specific details, but just details of like the age range and all of that is gross. And the part about it that I think hits a lot of people the wrong, like this the real injustice here is he did suffer no real consequences, as you put it, Ed.
Yeah, well, it was obvious that the sort of the corporate culture, they welcomed, they brought him right back. Like they brought him, like it wasn't even a year, and they brought the comic back, and we just he got demoted a little bit. He's in a different magazine. That's about it.
I think
they went forward. They went forward with the live action adaptations that I was not aware of until yesterday.
I don't think the series suffered any real negative ramifications other than the very slight ones you just mentioned. And look, there is, as Sam put it in a really good way, I thought. Just because, when your friend does something wrong, that doesn't mean you should, even when it's something really bad. Let's say your friend robs a bank. You don't. The best course of action is not necessarily shunning that person. It's like, why did you do that? Let's figure this out. At least being there for the person is not the wrong thing to do. Being there for the person in public, and not when that person has had no real consequence to the shitty thing that they did, is definitely. I don't know if grosser is the word.
Well, it's also the fact that he's going along with what the culture wants in this. They want to sort of paper this over. They want to go along with it, and that's disappointing because you think someone like him would have clout to do something if he wanted to. It doesn't seem like he wants to.
Yeah,
that kind of hurts.
And this isn't just like, oh, we're still buds and all that. It's not saying like, hey, no matter what, we're still friends. It's more like this guy now, Watsuki, he's been giving a platform, both to continue his manga, but now it's like he has like this exhibition and this interview. It's a platform to just like
for his glorification,
normalize him. It's Absolutely. Like it's putting him on a pedestal, and that's why this is so messed up.
Yeah.
So before we get back into things, Alex has also entered the fray here. How's it going,
Hello.
Alex? Hello.
It's going okay, it is what it is. Oh, God.
Yeah, no,
Sucks.
it does. So, I think the question, I think you guys put it really well on last week's podcast, yesterday's podcast, as of me recording this right now, in that, what kind of reaction should someone have to this? And can you really blame anyone for someone's negative or neutral reaction to it? And I think, the answer to the second question is everyone, I think, is entitled to their reaction to something like this.
I think that anybody, no matter how they react, that is the correct decision. I know it seems like.
No. I mean, there are things that I would definitely criticize people for, like defending Watsky. But that's not really what we're talking about here.
That's not what I'm talking about either. What I'm saying is that in terms of how you feel about Oda doing this, this is something that you will decide on a personal level, and nobody should judge you for deciding this thing on a personal level. And is it something that you're going to struggle with internally? Yeah. So, God, it's tough.
Yeah, I think the fact that it is so public, not just what Watsky did, but also Oda's kind of embrace of Watsky, maybe not of what he did, but at least of Watsky, the person and the professional. That's certainly incredibly disappointing. And I think, and you guys also mentioned this, the most disappointing thing is the complete lack of consequence to his actions.
That's the most jarring thing to me, honestly.
Yes. Yeah.
Especially when there have been other, crimes committed in Japan that have,
remember, what's his face is the voice actor for
Ivankov.
Indecent pictures of himself of his tattoos posted on the internet, and I don't know if he was he fined? I think he was fined and he lost his job.
Arrested.
Yeah, he was arrested, I think.
Yep.
And this is the original voice. There was two Ivankov voice actors. This was the original.
Yeah, this was the person that the character of Ivankov was originally based on too. And I believe he was also in Miami Tanaka's theater group as well, if my memory serves me right.
And he was very good, I thought, in that particular role too. And let's just be honest. I think what he did, it's a very different quote unquote crime, if you could call it that, because this crime, I think we need to also make it clear, is the reason it is a crime is because it harms other people, it harms children. There's a reason why it is the only form of speech in the United States one of the only forms of speech in the United States that you could get punished for by going to jail, by just possessing it.
It's actually, the American legal reasoning behind it is kind of fascinating, because there's such a strong First Amendment protection that the abuse of children is pretty much the one thing, like that they just ban outright based on the harm to the children created by it. So, it's really kind of unique in American, First Amendment law, which is, probably a good thing.
So, what I want to know is that, if Japan as a whole is just aware that, this kind of thing also has ties to underage sex trafficking. It's just, if you're not thinking about all these ramifications, then what does that say about about your overall government or
I don't,
or the way you culturally view something
I also don't want to overgeneralize, because I'm assuming 99.99% of the Japanese population does not engage in this kind of thing. Not to bring it back to something even more potentially depressing, but for example, the stuff with the virus going around right now, involves a very, very small market in China revolving around something that we shun, and that's the sale of live wildlife, endangered wildlife, which is also something terrible. But at the same time, you know, the reason that was able to develop in the first place is a combination of culture and this very small minority of, I think it was very affluent people who are able to engage in it without consequence. And I think it's probably something similar-ish in Japan with this. Especially, the thing that's so mind-boggling is not even that there's no consequence to it for Watsuki, but there seems to be just no legal, like there's such little legal ramification to this when something, you know, that seems so innocuous that the voice actor for Ivankov did lands you in jail and you lose your job and you know, it seems so hard to, you know, reconcile. I don't know if you guys have a thought.
Steve, do you have anything to say?
Well, it's a fucking crime, and it is one of the. I mean, not to like do a ranking of crimes here, but this is about as low as you could get, taking advantage of, you know, children who can't fend for themselves. And you know, I'll reinstate, like, he was in possession of child pornography. He didn't, you know, do anything with a minor, but nonetheless, it's messed up. And I understand that I guess Japan was a little slow with making this illegal, but it's you know, it's disturbing. And yeah, I don't think he's paid for the crime. You know, you want to talk about cancel culture and everything these days. Where your stance on it doesn't really matter to me. Like, this is the kind of crime that people should be enraged about, and people were enraged about. But like, geez, yeah, and it's kind of just, you know, it's being looked, you know, it's, you know, everyone's just looking the other way. And unfortunately, it seems like Oda is doing the same now. And that's really where it hurts, because it's one thing for, it's Oda's business to be like, hey, this is like a friend, associate, mentor, whatever. It's like they've fucked up in the past. I don't condone the behavior. I'm not making excuses for them, but, I'll see that they get better. I'll support them in their efforts to be better. That's like, I think that's all well and good. I think that's, I think maybe that's the right way to go about it. But yeah, here we are, and this is more of a platform to just be like, oh wow, look how it's like, just like, oh, it's like, here's a platform to promote Watsuki, not just as art, but himself as an artist, and then using Oda, who's like practically the biggest name in manga over there.
Hey, Steve, you want to go to the John Kay exhibition?
No.
Yeah.
No, I don't. And
the Michael Jackson exhibition, or the
it's like, I don't care to support it. And you'll hear some people sometimes use the phrase separate the art from the artist. You can't hear when the artist is being promoted along with the art. It's one thing to watch old episodes of Ren and Stimpy and be like, oh, hey, I enjoy these old episodes of Ren and Stimpy. I know John Kay is a monster of a person. Unfortunately, I'm not saying like, oh, but I could overlook that. I'm like, no, that context is always there. That context will be there for eternity. And unfortunately, that context is there with Rurouni Kenshin. And now, unfortunately, it's seeping into One Piece by association. And by Oda doing this. And I kind of just want to move the conversation forward. I don't want to just be like, I don't want to just talk about. No, it's like, right. I don't want to be like, it's like possessing child pornography is bad, and Watsuki's bad. I'm like, that's like, it's that's like, it's
that's
understatement of the
even,
year.
No, it's not even that. And I think the real, the imbalance here is that Watsuki has not made any real effort, and Shueisha has not made any real effort, and there has been no movement in him trying to seemingly better himself. And I think that you could be the I'm a believer that you could be the worst person on the face of the earth, but if you at least make some sort of effort, that you start to make inroads in that badness, and that you could improve yourself. Maybe I'm just an eternal optimist, but I think everyone has that ability within them. But you can't exercise that ability if you're never held to account, either by society or whomever. Yeah, go ahead.
If I recall, when all this went down, there wasn't any sort of public statement by Watsuki that was issued either an apology or an explanation or anything like that.
Mm-hmm. I was looking around. I saw one thing that said he had regret, and that was all I saw. Was his regret and because they fucking dropped him from Weekly Jump? That's it's regret probably. For the wrong reason at that point, probably.
Right?
Probably. I don't know the guy, but probably.
Now, what I want to know is where is everybody on where is everybody speaking up on the Japan side of things? What about all the other mangaka who grew up watching or reading Kenshin, and how come they're not saying stuff?
Is it it's really messed up for a bunch of white dudes to be asking these questions, but is this so ingrained in the culture to just not cause any waves and respect your elders, your mentors, that is they just doing it because it's just that this is the way? Sorry, not to use a fucking Star Wars reference, but that's what I wonder.
Answer to that. Yeah.
I don't know. I haven't.
These are just.
Heard about the Japanese reaction to it, so
I'm not asking any. I'm not asking any questions. This is mostly a rhetorical question. Is anything going to be done by other mangaka who are trying to take a stand on this, or do they even have an opinion on this?
Well, I mean, Alex, I'd say the one person who could take a stand because he has the ability because of his clout and everything else is probably Oda, and the fact that maybe it's just the past connection he has with Watsuki that makes it difficult, but he could have easily just said no, and no one would have known, except I guess Watsuki himself. But he could have also just been even if he still wanted to be friendly with Watsuki for whatever reason in private, he could have said that, look, I don't want to publicly seem like I tacitly approve what you did. I feel like that shouldn't even be such a huge leap for Oda to take. And I think that's what's most disappointing about this whole thing.
Yeah, this
or
is
that maybe Shueisha put him in
something.
That position,
say a word.
I don't think so. As much one thing I definitely want to do is not make excuses for Oda. It's more I'm just trying to figure out why, or just get in that headspace, which we never will, because none of us are the man, and we don't even know him. Most people don't know him, so I think he had a choice, and he's freaking Oda. He could turn down anything.
Yeah.
He made a choice. I'm just wondering if it's kind of just it's a mentor thing. It's this guy was his teacher. Does he feel indebted to him?
The senpai kohai relationship type thing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I guess
this is the person who gave him his start.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that I'm not saying that's an excuse, but I'm just adding to what you're saying, Steve.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, one of my favorite sayings, I don't know where the hell it comes from, but is that it's a reason, not an excuse. That it explains why he did the things he did, but that doesn't mean he should have done the things he did.
No, it doesn't make it any less better at all.
Yeah, or it doesn't make it any more better. It doesn't make it anything.
Any less good is what you know what I mean. I know what you know what I mean.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the closest analogy I could think of is okay, what if a family member of yours were in this situation?
Yeah, that's cutting pretty deep, but I mean, I guess it's a good rhetorical question.
I'm not making excuses. I'm just trying to understand why.
Well, if I was in that position, I think that's the one thing that I would try to ascertain, the why. Like, it's if I were in that particular position, the one that you just mentioned about, like, oh, what if a family member da 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 da, like. There's going to be a lot of denial and whatever that comes from that. But then before you decide to cut them off cold turkey, I think the ascertaining why is that would be my first thing. Like, like, why did you do this? It's a lot. I think it's a lot less cut and dry than simply like, nope. Just because
it's so much easier to cut someone out of your life when you don't know them.
Yes, it's a lot, and it's a lot easier to say that you can cut somebody out of your life before it's actually time to do that.
Yep. I mean, I think Ed put it really well. I forget if it was on the last show, but when you're born in the soup of all this crap, where it's just allowed, you don't really realize that, oh no, outside of this, this is not okay, or this is much less okay than I think it is. Even if he doesn't think it's okay, he might just not think. He might think it's like littering or I don't know. But I mean,
like, what's the priority? Like, where's the pecking order here in terms of like, oh well, this is less bad than this thing, so it's fine.
Right. Yeah. Like, I'm sure if Watsuki killed a man, he might have a different opinion about it. And the thing is, it's probably a lot closer to that than the thing he thinks it is. I mean, that's such a difficult, like, even position to put yourself in. But if you want my opinion about it, and I think I'm sure you guys agree, at least in some respect, that he absolutely did the wrong thing. And that it definitely taints him as an author. I also I did note, I think we were talking about this together when we heard the news, and I was abroad. It does help that Oda does his absolute best to separate himself from the series as a whole. It stops that kind of, even though we do it and we call him Goda. What's the version? Goda?
Don't say we.
Yeah,
I'm saying this is why this is why it's not a good idea to go around. First of all, call someone like a nickname that doesn't fucking make sense audibly. But don't refer to anyone as a fucking god. Because
exactly.
Because I'll tell you this much.
Somebody like that a pestle.
Yeah, like I'll tell you this much. Like, people will disappoint you.
Yes,
100%.
Everybody will.
Yeah.
People always disappoint you. Some on a much grander scale than others, but everyone's fucking human, and people will fuck up and do things that will disappoint you. And Oda's no exception. And not saying like, oh, this is why he keeps to himself. He doesn't do too many interviews. I'm like, you know what? I don't blame the dude. So like, not saying like this situation, but like, how it is on social media these days. You have like the most random fucking strangers commenting on like anyone of some sort of like celebrity, like level, just like the way strangers will talk to like people online, maybe not even celebrities, just like regular people. It's bananas, the way like there's no filter with some people, or people will be antagonizing hateful and bigots to people because they're like, they don't care because there's someone they'll never have to come face to face with. Feel like I'm going off a little topic here.
No, you're right. I mean, like, the whole thing is,
well, this is that fandom discussion that you wanted to have, Zach.
Yeah, it's a good transition.
I don't know if I want to get in that, because I just feel like I don't know if I've gotten everything off my chest with this situation.
Well, look, like the 30,000 foot view of it is that Oda did a really shitty thing here that doesn't I mean, we don't know whether he is, but I'm assuming he's not a shitty person. You know, I wouldn't say that. It's just we all do things that are shitty. This is especially shitty, if you ask me. And I wish that there were a way to convey that in a way that it would actually be received, but I don't think there is. It's just it's a shitty situation. I don't really know what else I could how else I could put it.
It gets a no from me, dog. I can't support this decision.
No.
And I'm not going to make excuses for him. Zach, you put it best. Like, there's a difference between finding the excuse for something and finding the reasoning behind. And I'm sure there's many reasons why he opted to do this, but I don't think this was the right call. If you asked me, if I supported Oda's decision to do this interview, I'm just gonna tell you no.
What makes this especially bad, in my point of view, is that because he didn't face any consequence, you're supporting, not only the practice potentially in Japan to continue, but who knows if he still is, because he didn't really face any consequence. You don't. There's a lot of unknowns here, and obviously that's all very speculative, but it's just kind of, it's extremely disappointing. There's probably a stronger word for it, but I can't think of it right now. Do any of you guys have any other things?
I don't know. I mean, this seems so pretentious when I'm going to say it. It's like when one of your parents tells you they're disappointed with you. It's they still care about you.
Yeah, it's but it's somehow worse than them being angry at you.
Yeah, that is kind of where I am, because it's like someone you have outside of this a tremendous amount of respect for. Obviously, they're not always perfect. They don't always do the right thing. They don't always make the decision you would make, but it's disappointing when they do something that's just so outside of the realm of what's right. Yeah.
And this is just, this is bigger than, Rob. I mean, all crimes are pretty bad here, but this is far bigger than just robbing a bank or stealing something from the store. This is Watsuki did something so fucked up that profits off of the abuse of minors, and this is some deep fucking shit we're talking here. This is. You're well in the you're deep in the muck of all this. This is really fucking loathsome, and I'm just disappointed that Shueisha, whoever, just the society is just let's have this art show and let's talk to this guy. It's one thing. It's one thing to be I still watch Kenshin. It's I grew up with the series. I like it. I don't respect Watsuki as a person, but I like this series. That's different. But then just be hey, Rurouni Kenshin, it's a series I like. Now it's talk about, the creator and, what their process was and what a great job they did.
And celebrate them. I mean, that's the crazy thing about it, is that it's a celebration of him in the same way you would celebrate a lot of authors who did not possess child pornography. You're absolutely right, Steve. That's where it crosses the Rubicon, because you could. I think everyone is entitled to their opinion as to Kenshin and how they want to consume that, or how they approve of Oda or not in this circumstance. But it's Shueisha's decision, I think, is beyond reason and excuse, if you ask me. I think that's the most heinous part of it, as I mentioned.
Well, it's not like they didn't give him his job back almost less than a year later.
Immediately.
So. Yeah, I mean,
but good on Viz, for actually putting their foot down.
Well, I think that just speaks to the different public response.
Yeah,
like
and culture. Yeah.
Granted, I don't read Japanese, but it doesn't seem. It seems like crickets.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't been keeping up, but
it's like the punishment for like drug possession, like the crime, it's like the punishment they receive is like absolutely absurd.
Yeah.
I think there was someone who was playing a voice in a video game. I'm sorry I didn't do my research here. I think it was like
he was caught with cocaine. I remember this story. Yeah. It was like last year.
It was the spin-off game from the Yakuza series, if I'm not mistaken. Caught with cocaine. They completely they made a patch where they replaced his voice, and he's just blacklisted. I mean, this is a different example. This has been coming to my head a lot. It has to do with a foreigner. This is a wrestling thing, but Ed, you know who Matt Seidel is, right?
Oh yeah. He was caught with like marijuana cartridges at customs, I think, and
and he was like, and he was arrested, and he was
kept in detention for like 3 weeks, and then he shipped him off back to Japan, off to like Hawaii.
Yeah.
I mean, we have similar disparities in criminal punishment here. We have some really shitty. Not with
honestly, relative to the punishments for child molestation in this country. I mean, child pornography may be over prosecuted in this country relative to child abuse, but
yes, probably. And I mean, also drug possession.
That also differs, and it's usually the difference between state crimes and federal crimes and the different sentencing that it involves because of the way it's charged. It does. I mean, it's not. I don't know. That bugged me when I learned about that.
Our criminal justice system generally doesn't focus as much on rehabilitation as much as it does punishment, and
that's where the money is, Zach.
Yeah, I know. Private prison. That's a whole other bag of something.
Oh, I don't know. I mean, the Japanese justice system isn't about that either. The Japanese justice system is about getting you to confess, and then we don't have to go to trial.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean that's kind of similar. We like settlements in the United States.
Yeah, it's on a bit of a different level.
Yeah, no, look.
The police in Japan have broader powers than, in some ways, than police in America do.
I know
police
South
in America
Korea
have other
is a whole other level there. Specifically,
we're getting off topic here.
Yeah,
it's just
What are all right?
This could always change, but like as of now, I'm still reading One Piece, still doing this podcast. I still like the series, but now there's there's a little bit of a black eye on it at the moment. Like this is the black eye, and
for
sure.
I'm trying to think of a way to word it. I mean, it's definitely many degrees different than Watsuki himself. It's still not, I don't think, anywhere close to that. I think you guys compared it to being angry at Meryl Streep versus being mad at Woody Allen.
Yeah.
I think
Roman Polanski rather. Yeah, because
Roman Polanski. Sorry,
yeah.
It's not
or anybody or the Woody Allen thing as well, because there's a countless slew of actors who.
Well, I was gonna say, wasn't it Scarlett Johansson? Is that the one?
She's one of them, there's a whole slew of actors who, the big one, of course, is Diane Keaton, who I believe is in love with Woody Allen, but that's a whole other can of worms.
Okay. Never mind.
I don't need to get into that. I also don't know very much. I don't keep up with all that very much, which I'm happy to not keep up with very much. But all I was saying is that there's degrees of magnitude that you could be disappointed and angry at someone, I think. Between Scarlett Johansson and Woody Allen, I think there's different. It's fine to have shades of gray in both how people are, because we're all shades of gray, and also in how you react to people, because there's just so many nuances. You can't just say this person is bad completely because of something bad they did, and you can't just say someone is good completely because of some good they did. Hero worship versus. If you look at things in black and white, you're going to be disappointed, regardless. That's kind of my takeaway.
No, that's 100%. I stopped looking at shit in black and white like years and years ago, and it's helped me, cope with things better. But the one thing that I can say is that if this news has negatively impacted you and your view of the series, and you wish to drop the series, and that is completely up to you. And it's perfectly reasonable.
You just have to continue to download the One Piece podcast each week. You don't have to listen; it just needs to be downloading in the. That brings us kind of to our next point. I want to talk a little bit about how our fandom has changed since the beginning. We had a question. I don't have it in front of me. Where someone was like, "I'm dropping the series because you get the podcast because because you guys are getting too negative about it." And since we're talking about a pretty damn
was that exactly subject, what was said? I thought it was just like the passion.
Let me try and open up. Yeah, I might be.
They said that they weren't going to listen to the show anymore, and it's because we felt like I think we had lost our passion.
And it wasn't so much like I can't handle negativity. It's like
I feel like I really enjoyed the series, and I feel like I talk about that every week. And I guess I just don't understand the criticism.
I mean,
if that's how you feel,
do you want us to act like we're on all the time when it comes to One Piece? Do you want us to fucking jump around the room on our beds and talk about 19 pages of a comic we read every week?
Well, there are people on the internet that do that.
No, I know. I was trying to be tongue in cheek about it.
Yeah. Sorry, I was dumb. I guess.
Took the tongue out.
But Alex, there are people that do that. Now,
Tom Cruise for one, he loved Katie Holmes. You should see. You should listen to his Katie Holmes podcast. I feel like there's so much passion there. No, kidding.
I don't know. I'm not going to judge. I'm not going to call anyone a faker. But unfortunately, I live in a lot of people will say this who don't live here. They that LA is very fake, but people put a lot. They put on a face, but
hey, people put a lot of effort into authenticity.
Yeah, I will say
that was a really good one. Oh, okay.
I don't know. I'm not about to knock how people react on the internet.
Wait, what was the line I had yesterday? Like, all the money in the world can't make you cool. Can't go back and make you cool in high school.
Yeah. I know it.
Nice.
When Ed said that, I felt like I was like, "Ow!" I'm like, "What was that sharp pain that just felt in my heart?" I think the style, the reaction has changed, and God, I feel like I'm just like attacking YouTube, but I think just the new sensation is immediate reactions, and by just mean getting those reviews out as quick as possible. And boy, we know.
And the culture of I think anime fandom has sort of changed, and we're kind of stuck in our ways. And this is what it's like being an old person in fandom. This is the entire the majority of the fandom is turned over. It's new people. These are the people who don't know who Watsuki is. You have to explain it, is what I'm saying. So there's a whole different generation of people now, and they enjoy things in a different way. And we're we're old.
We've gotten older. People know how time works.
Damn it.
But we all don't have a devil fruit that can make us stay the same age and magically get older.
I'm still in search though.
It's all Bonnie. It's always about Bonnie. You get down to it.
I don't know. We've been doing this podcast for over 10 years now.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to touch on. I definitely go in cycles where my passion isn't always there. The way I've recently been approaching the podcast is I'm not always looking forward to it before, I read the chapter. I'm not always super hyped about it like I sometimes am. Sometimes I'm not, sometimes I am. But when I come and I do the podcast, I am in it. And I 9 out of 10 times I am loving that chapter. And part of the reason I, enjoy One Piece is because, I've talked about this all the time, is because I get to talk to all of you and I'm talking about it with all of you guys. And it I don't know how passionate, to be frank, I don't know how passionate I'd be about the series if I weren't doing the podcast. Or I should say at least at this point. Yeah. I mean, there's certainly arcs I would be, but
I'd take breaks. I'd binge read. I'd love to do that. I'd love to be able to experience this all at once. I love that feeling of going back like it was when I started the series, and I could just plow all the way through it. But no, we got the podcast to do, and I love talking about One Piece every week, so I can't not do it. I love it.
Yeah.
I felt like I was leading. It sounded like I was making excuses for myself. I'm like, no, I still have the passion. I'm like, no, I actually, to be quite frank, I've been questioning myself a lot lately on what I'm passionate about and what things I enjoy. Do I enjoy anything? Because I often find myself, especially in the climate of social media, I am surrounded by people who are very vocal and very passionate about things. And when I don't feel the same way, I start to get really down on myself. So having someone actually question that, like, it kind of hit like very close to home. Not like I was offended, but I was like, no, I mean, I have noticed that, I'm not as outspoken as others, and maybe I'm not as outspoken as my old self. Oh, just in general, I'm definitely not as outspoken as I used to be. I'm a lot more reserved. And I give myself a lot of flack for that, because I feel like I need to be on, I need to be, just being a co-host on 3 different podcasts. I need to have something interesting to say always. And I don't, maybe it's just an LA thing too. Like it's fucked with my head a little bit.
Well, I can tell you something right off the bat, Steve, that I don't think that you need to be on all the time, because I think that naturally you're a very charismatic and wonderful person. And as long as I get to even talk to you guys, I think that's what drives me. Honestly, that's what drives the passion for me about One Piece and this podcast. And I enjoy having discussions with you all every week about it. And it gets me in that mood. I personally, have never stopped loving One Piece, and it at this point has become the thing that I like. That I put over Star Wars as the thing that I like the most, just because
One Piece has disappointed me a lot less. I'll say that.
Absolutely.
That's sort of where I'm at.
Star Wars, and I love both of them.
Because the nice thing about One Piece is that it's one chapter. Like, if it's a shitty chapter, then hey, next week, hey, not bad. But Star Wars, well, we all know how that turned out.
I don't think my love for this series is so. The person said like your love and passion. I think sometimes my passion's not there, but we're human beings. We have different days.
Love and passion are 2 different things, by the way. Like,
yeah, 100%. Yeah, I have a strong love for One Piece that has not, I don't think, waned really at all over the last decade, which is pretty insane to think about. But my passion is different every single week. And I think we're all human beings, and we're going to be passionate about different things, different weeks.
And not to sound like grumpy old men, but we're a bunch of grumpy old men now compared to 2010. Because think about it. Zach was fun employed. That's why this podcast started. I was wet behind the ears college student who barely talked about One Piece with anybody. Like I could count on one hand the people I talked about One Piece with until I joined this podcast. And you got to, when you get older, I don't want to say like, oh, we have so much wisdom with us now. It's like, no, like we've lived more lives, and the same things don't surprise us like they would 10 years ago.
Yeah, we've gotten used to how the story goes and how everything is sort of written, and right now we're sort of just waiting for the big things to happen.
Yeah, and we're not YouTubers. None of us, I know myself for certain, don't have the ability to either act or actually have that true emotional, like, I don't even know how to describe it beyond like emotional orgasm. Like, it's like this.
Here's how I view it. I have no obligation to act unnaturally to get people hyped up. Yeah. I feel like the work should speak for itself, and I get to and talk about how much I'm enjoying it with people that I like.
I think there are exceptions to that. I don't want to overgeneralize YouTubers, like Grand Line Review and Eye Patch Wolf and Roger, who does have like a lot of passion and a lot of happiness and emotion, but I think that that's coming from like a genuine place with him. I just don't have that well of energy anywhere close to me. I am an introvert. Even though I do this podcast every week, and I don't like, this is not something that like completely passion is not something that necessarily naturally flows out of. I'm gonna go out on a limb and say any of us, which is kind of why we have the grumpy old men syndrome because we also are. But we're also, it's what you said, we're not 20-something, like 22 or 19 or however old you were, Steve. We're not.
I wasn't of legal drinking age. That's what I remember.
Yeah. No, you were 20, or 19.
Yeah, I was 20. It was
10 years ago, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's easy to do that math.
Yeah.
I feel like it just sounds like we're making excuses. I think, if we...
Reasons, not excuses.
And I use the term lightly. If we're not doing our job right, I think I'd rather get more critique because I wouldn't want to settle in my ways. Because if I know something too I'm going through is just, I just don't want to. I don't want my life to become monotonous, and I think I've been struggling with that too. And I definitely don't want the podcast to feel monotonous. I think it's why Zach is very adamant about switching around our guests, getting different voices on. It's why, it's like I'll gladly, step away from the podcast if need to, on certain episodes or anything else. But if I'm not doing a good job, I'd rather someone tell me,
Absolutely.
And then again, and that's very opinionated. And, but it's almost like a town hall meeting right here. It's like, state of the One Piece podcast.
Right. I mean,
one thing I think where our podcast, is flawed or it just fails is because, now with just like the way the internet has evolved in the last 10 years, just the way just media consumption has evolved in 10 years, for Christ's sake, like we start up when like there's like, oh hey, we're gonna start simulcasting the new One Piece episodes after an hour after they air in Japan. It was like you invented the freaking wheel. It was back then. But I just think everything is like instant, and it's kind of hard for us to keep up because we release our episodes on Mondays, and I think the best thing we do is just how active, and this is credit to Zach and a few others, but just like how active the Twitter account is. And it's funny how some people say they don't even they're not even aware we're a show, we're a podcast. People just like, oh, I just follow this account because I get news from you. And I wish, if this was if we knew what we knew now, I think we'd be I think we'd be a lot more active. We'd be doing a lot more things, but this is still, even in our Patreon we use to pay for website and other stuff. But this is, after 10 years, the show is still a labor of love. We do this because we want to. This isn't, we didn't all quit our jobs to start doing the One Piece podcast. We do our job. We do the podcast around all our jobs and all our other commitments. And some of you guys have far more commitments than I do. I don't know where I'm going with this.
No. I want to piggyback off of that in that I think so. I listen to podcasters where that is their job, and I am so envious of that. But we all also have other things that we are passionate about or just need to pay bills that are, let's say, New York or Los Angeles or Chicago amount. they're very big bills. And for many reasons, this is not our only thing. We're all, multifaceted people. And, I think sometimes just all the other stuff in life, can suck out, I don't know, suck out the passion, but definitely suck out the energy for some of us. Like Steve, you're working on Rick and Morty. You're working on like 8,000 other shows.
Like I could tell you how much I beat myself. Not at the same time, but like I could tell you how much I beat myself up. How I wish, and some of my friends do it, and I can't. Like I wish I could, come home from, I draw all day at work and come home and then just keep drawing and, posting stuff on the internet, like make some new fan art. And I don't know. I think I've always been kind of very scatterbrained with my art, but like now it's like late, as of late, like I don't really draw so much on my free time. And also, I don't know, I feel like, I don't do any cool side projects when I realize like, shit, I do 3 podcasts.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
I try my best to go to the gym when I can. And like, I hang out with my friends and, go see a movie or go do something else like fun.
And you wash your hands, and that's really all.
And you wash your hands, everybody. You wash your hands. Yes, after you pee, not just after number 2. That's all.
What's great though is now I'm just singing "We Are" when I do that, and it's fantastic. Like you'll accidentally be there for like 2.5 minutes or 1.5 minutes or however long.
The podcast is and sometimes like if it's for the wrong reasons, I apologize, because I definitely want to keep contributing to the fan base and make it a very entertaining, engaging show for One Piece fans. But I also want to keep doing this show because I enjoy talking with some of my best friends about my favorite series. And I just want to make sure it's good too. Like we do so many inside jokes and, and I know like probably so many people groan at the stuff I say, but I just want,
Wait, you can hear me doing that?
I mean, if we're not like, if we're not connecting enough with, with One Piece fans, I would like to for sure, but I also don't want to do something that's not genuine. That's not us. And also something that's, that's something that's not feasible for us because we all have our own lives and, Patreon's cool and all, but there's no way that's going to pay the bill for a bunch of contributors. And, and also, this isn't, I don't know why I'm saying this, but it's like, this isn't a job. This is a cool side project that has gone on for a long time.
A long time. I think, For a lot of people, their favorite part of the podcast is that, and this is one of the reasons I made the podcast, Ed could attest, is that a lot of people don't have people to talk about with One Piece about. It's like, even though it has become significantly more popular than it was in 2009, it's still a secret little thing for a lot of people. Like, they're not purposely trying to make it secret, maybe, but they don't have people to talk about it with. So we could be the friends, that parasocial relationship that they have. They could hear us talking about it. So the fact that, to an extent, but I think like having us, our friendships, it's the most prototypical One Piece thing you could have as a reason to do this podcast. But like having our friendships be kind of the main drive and reason we do this every week, I think is a perfectly reasonable one. Even beyond just enjoying that week's chapter. Obviously, there are chapters that were like, oh crap, I gotta talk about this. And one of them, and they're always when I'm not on, 100% of the time. But
we could have picked a better series because like the parallels. Because like to me, this podcast has basically been my One Piece journey. Because a whole other, ask me about it sometimes. I could do like a whole like web, just a tree of how so many things in my life can be linked back to this podcast. And just say like me working on Rick and Morty, like I could trace this back to the podcast. I can.
I mean, look, I'm not going to take too much credit here, but you could say that for you. Steven being the translator on the series, Jose being on CNN, I'm trying to think.
I don't want to speak we shouldn't necessarily speak for everyone else because like they got where they were on their own,
it's a combination.
But Jose, like I remember Jose said, is like, yeah, I'm going to use OPP Japan in my resume when he applied for CNN, and that's
he got his IMDb credit out of it.
Yeah, and I'm not like taking full credit for Steven's translating abilities. I'm just saying that like I know he was.
Yeah, they predate us by quite a few years.
Yeah, by a decade, I think. But that I know he was in a little bit of a One Piece slump himself, and that we were one of the things from what from what Steven told us, how I recall, that's one of the things that brought him back into the One Piece fold. So like, I am so grateful that this is here, and I do still have the love, even I hope to have that passion every time I do the show, and if people have real critiques about it, we do want to hear them. That I thought that question was civil, and obviously it makes us sad to hear, but I'm also actually glad that they did bring that up.
I wasn't offended at all. I just felt like it was my duty to be like, am I doing a good job? Am I doing my part? I mean, all I can do is just be honest. I'm like, I have not listened to old episodes. I definitely don't want to.
No.
But I'll admit, I'm I'm getting flashback fatigue with the Odin thing, and I think I even said, I'm like, the Odin stuff didn't quite hit me. But then again, I'm not a 15-year-old who's just binging every episode of the anime.
Yeah.
And it's like, who's like waking up, before school. I'm like, was it like 6 o'clock in the morning? I could fit one episode in before I have to, head to school. It was like, I think, stories hit you in so many different ways at different ages. Because I just talked about Ava recently on the Deep End, and I'm much happier that I watched that series like now, so because I definitely have like a different approach to it and different feelings about it, and just knowing as I know now, just living the whatever life I've lived, I could just get more out of that series than I did when I was a teenager.
I didn't watch it as a teenager. I only watched it as an adult. And
I wasn't really, I wasn't a very smart teenager, so I was just It's like
I was still a teenager when I watched all of it. Mm-hmm. From like the ages of that's all I watched from the ages of like 18 and 19.
I mean, I'll just say, as it concerns, this topic, I think and Ed brought it up earlier. When you do it every week, I think for me, there's a lot of things that I end up like getting fatigue about that are like highlights of the series for a lot of people, including this flash. This is gonna draw a lot of responses. I feel like what I'm about to say. This flashback, the Katakuri fight, Dressrosa, Fishman Island. I'm like thinking of like the big moments in the series where I felt a lot of fatigue. I thought like I going through Whole Cake Island, I was like, I know this is good. I know this is like an interesting and different story, but I just am feeling a lot of fatigue, like especially for that last section.
I am so happy we were reading Fishman Island 10 years ago.
Yeah, like that may have broke me today if that were happening. Yeah.
I shudder to think what I would think of Skypiea.
Yeah, like, but then on the other hand, in retrospect, those age so damn well. All the things I listed, I think. I mean, obviously the flashback is still happening, but with everything else, Skypiea definitely is like now one of my favorite arcs. Fishman Island, especially with what's going on in the world generally, I think has become a better and better story to turn back to. And the Katakuri fight obviously has aged, I think, extremely well with the community, and I think I need to do a real reread of that. Dressrosa, I still have,
and I feel like
we reread Dressrosa.
Yeah,
there's still problems.
There's still issues. Yeah,
and like I felt like we've been a little bit cruel to like fans of Ace and Law, and
well, a lot of those are like in good fun. They're not.
Yeah,
I think people know that those are not serious. Like, I mean,
if I hate a character, you'll know. You know, it's more like
Vandertekken.
It's like when like one of your best friends starts dressing differently, and you're like, "What are you doing?" And then like you just can't help but just like tear down the facade.
Yeah, that's it. But also, that's like a dark humor thing, like the Ace is dead thing from that Luffy said at the beginning of Wano, that Jill made a shirt for. Like, it doesn't mean we don't think. I thought Ace's death was really well done and impactful, and
oh yeah, that definitely. I remember the tone of that podcast when we covered that chapter, but at the same time, it was. I don't know. I think just the reason why I made jokes of it because like Ace was so underdeveloped.
No. The reason we made jokes about it is because the next week they came out with merch in that tropical pink that said "Get busy living" or "Get busy dying," that we made fun of, and I think that it helped lighten that really dark moment in the series.
For
story.
Us, maybe. God, you still say that at a convention, and people are like, "No."
Yeah, people stopped reading. There are a lot of people who just are like, "Oh, I can't do this anymore," and I'm like, "All right, you're missing out on a lot of other stuff." But
I think when we did like the magazine segment, just finding out like how many people like they think Marineford is like the pinnacle of One Piece, and I mean, I do remember that was when we started the podcast, and how just like One Piece was all the rage then, and I think people from our generation tend to think like the Water 7 and these lobby stuff.
Yeah, but it wasn't in this country really. There wasn't a big fan base until really, and didn't explode until after we started the podcast.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I don't know. I definitely don't want to sound like I don't want to sound like old curmudgeons. Like, no, we don't do anything wrong. You're the ones that are wrong. You know, we've been doing this for
I don't think we're saying that.
10 years. That's just what I just would rather, you know, I want to be as appealing as we can, but as long as we're authentic, you know.
That's what I was about to say. I think I care more about being authentic to how we actually feel than even appealing to people. Because I think one follows the other. I think if we're trying to appeal to people and don't care about being authentic, then we're really not offering anything. That's my opinion about it. So that's the state of the One Piece podcast, I guess. Or at least how we're feeling at this very moment. Yeah, so we're gonna do a normal episode on Sunday with Sungwon, and
oh, great!
Yeah, I'm looking forward to the next chapter.
I think we'll have a chapter and an anime episode. We haven't had an anime in 2 weeks.
Yes, is that because of the news, or is there like an event that?
Well, no, there was the Emperor's birthday. That was one of them. I don't know what the other. I don't know why there were 2 weeks though.
Yeah,
they've just been a scheduled break.
Yeah, that's who knows. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to that. I haven't been on for like a proper manga recap in a little bit. Well, I guess 2 weeks, 3 weeks. So yeah, I'm back. We're gonna do that. Thanks for tackling some heavy subjects with me today. If you haven't, please subscribe to us on Patreon. We put up some really great art from the last episode, and I'm so sad some of it wasn't used, but also I'm very happy with the image.
What was your choice? What would you have fought for?
Let me open up at patreon.com/One Piece Podcast. So let's see, what do we got? We got Pop and Circumstance. That's what we went with. Which one would I have? There's Why the Long Face. Fighting Orochi by Moonlight, I think. might be the one.
That's not the one you reacted most to this morning when I showed them to you.
Oh no, I think I reacted most to "You Could Wake Up Dead Tomorrow."
Right.
That one's amazing.
That was a good one, Steve.
That was yeah, okay. But that's because I like really dark humor.
And The Simpsons. So.
I made the gif of that.
I loved, so I finished the episode like right before we sat down today, and I loved how you ended up the podcast. Call us anytime. Or you can wake up dead tomorrow.
It's just the reaction it got from us. We're like, ah.
Yeah, no, it was perfect. Yeah, so yeah, I guess we could leave it there. Ed, do you want to let people know where they could contact us?
Sure, OnePiecePodcast.com.
That's fine. Yeah, subscribe to us if you haven't. I don't know what you're waiting for. That's it. We'll be back with a normal episode. My name is Zach.
My name is Ed.
My name is Steve.
Alex.
I think Alex.
Here.
Yeah, Alex.
He came in late and he left early, but he was here. We'll see you on Sunday, everyone. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.